Welcome. Thank you for being here on November the 12th. We're going to be going into a closed session at 6 o'clock, so thank you. Madam Clerk, the council is all here and accounted for, so thank you for all being here on time. At this time, I'd like to call on our city attorney to read us into closed session, please. Danny?
Yes, Mayor, there's two items scheduled for closed session tonight. One is with respect to a public employee performance evaluation, which is authorized pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B to conduct an employee performance evaluation for the position of city manager. And the second is a conference with labor negotiations, with the labor negotiators of the city, the mayor and mayor pro tem, which is authorized pursuant to Government Code 54957.6 with respect to the unrepresented employee, which is the city manager.
Thank you, Danny. At this time, I will open our public comment period. I don't see anybody here that has wanted to express the opinion that they want to talk. I have no cards. Madam Clerk, is there anybody that you have received updates from?
No, Mayor.
Okay. Hearing and seeing none, then I will close our public comment period and adjourn us into closed session at 6:01. Thank you. Thanks for being here. And I will ask our city attorney to read us out of closed session, please. Danny?
Yes, Mayor. A closed session was held on two items. One was a performance evaluation, which was authorized pursuant to Government Code 54957B for a performance evaluation of the city manager, and the second was a closed session with the city's labor negotiators, the mayor and the mayor pro tem, with respect to an unrepresented employee, which was the city manager. The council unanimously agreed to authorize a discretionary incentive payment of $15,000 pursuant to the existing city manager's contract, consistent with the direction given last year.
Great, thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Welcome again. Would ask that all of you who have cell phones or anything that will buzz, scream, create any kind of noise, if you could make sure that is turned off, we would appreciate that. And that will enable us to move as quickly as we can to get things going. The pastor that was supposed to pray tonight is not apparently here, so it's always good to have a backup. Not that she's a backup, because she's really first in all of our minds. But Reverend Davis is going to offer the prayer, and then Bill is going to come up and lead us in our pledge. So for those of you who can, please stand, and Karen will pray, and then Bill will lead us in our pledge. Thank you.
Let us join together in prayer. God of service and sacrifice, on this week in which we have paused to give thanks for our men and women in the armed services, we are thankful for their willingness to put service above self. We ask your blessing on our time here tonight. May we be inspired by their example of service to do our best in serving the community. We are grateful for all of those who give their best each and every day to make Glendora the great place it is to live, work, and play. May you continue to inspire us, and may we always find ways to show our gratitude for those who give of themselves for others. Amen.
Thank you. Bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please join me as we pledge allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Karen, thank you for that great prayer and timely prayer, as the veterans have been on our minds this week, and we celebrate each one of them. And for any of you who fall into that special class, thank you for the service that you give. All right. Does anybody on the dais want to reorder or add anything to the agenda? Hearing, seeing none, we'll let the agenda stand as is. We will now go into the comment period. As you can see, there is a specific time frame that you are allowed to speak. Direct anything that you have to me. Be kind, gracious, and if you don't have a card, there are yellow cards right on the edge of that desk, and if you'd like to speak, just come up and grab one of those. So we will open that period right now. And Madam Clerk, do you have any cards? I don't have any cards, but do you have some?
I do not have any cards.
Okay. Does anybody here want to speak? This is your time to speak. We just had a week that we all were able to vote, and part of that vote is free speech. Isn't that great? And it is great, and it's a good thing. And so we wanted to acknowledge, if there's anybody here that wants to speak, we would more than welcome you to do that. This is your chance. Okay, hearing and seeing none, I will close our public comment period. And we will move into member statement reports. Michael, you want to start us off?
Sure. Thank you, Mendel. I don't know if anyone was paying attention last Friday after the elections. CARB, California Air Resource Board, on a 12-2 vote, raised our gas tax. It was quite large. It's roughly about 65 cents a gallon. That's going to go into effect possibly sometime next year. And what was ironic is that the governor had a special meeting for oil companies about gas prices and things of that nature, and now we have a large increase. This is a breakdown to let everybody know. The state tax currently is 59.6 cents per gallon, just as a state tax. Cap and trade, 28%, or 28 cents. Sales tax, 12 cents. The CARB tax is 75 cents by 2026. Underground storage is 2 cents. That's about roughly $1.76.6 per gallon that we're all going to be asked to pay. And on a friendly note, on a good note, coming up on for the holiday stroll, November 22nd at 6 p.m. at our old bus stop. We're going to have the whole street, you might say, lit up. Adam, they're going to be closed down the street for that again? Yeah, wonderful. So there's going to be lots of festivities. Santa Claus is going to be there, and lots of good stuff. Thank you, Mayor.
Michael, thank you. Appreciate that. Karen? Anything?
No, just was going to make a reminder about the holiday stroll, but that's it. Thank you.
David? Let me do what I should do. Have Gary and then you speak. Mayor Pro Tem, Okay. Gary, I'm sorry.
Well, there's just a lot of things going to be coming up in the city over the holidays. Besides the holiday stroll, we got the gingerbread contest coming up on December 7th over at Finkbeiner, but watch for all of the holiday gatherings all over the city. That's really all I had. Thanks.
Now, David?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to thank and acknowledge the city staff that supported yesterday's Veterans Day program here at City Hall on their day off. So very generous of them and very proactive, along with the Scouts, the Police Department, and the Veterans of Foreign Wars Lodge, I'll call it 475, Post 475. A wonderful program, very motivating speaks, and thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you very much, and look forward to the holiday stroll.
David, thank you. And I just want to, echo that the stroll will be on Friday, the 22nd. We'll light the tree at 6 o'clock, and Santa Claus will be there. It'll be a jammed-packed time, so hope that everybody will be able to come out. As you all know, the 28th is a special day, where friends, family gather to say thanks, and I hope that that is a special day for you as well. I also want to say thank you to everybody that took the time to vote. What a special right that each of us have. And I want to say thank you to those that did vote. I also want to say thank you to those that ran for anything. The five of us know it's not an easy job to run. And for those that ran for anything, school board, a commissioner, whatever, to get in the center of life and things like that, thank you for, taking time to do that. And I hope that we can finally just lean into to how the elections have turned out, and hope that the extreme sides, both left and right, can temper some of the rhetoric that they have, both sides, and that we as Americans can lean in to make our nation, our state, our county, city as great as it can be, and as caring as it can be. And for that, I hope that that can can occur. Congratulations to those that ran, and appreciate that. So with that, yes.
If I may, typically there's going to be some changes in the school board, as we all know. Normally, the school board meetings, Glendora Unified School Board meetings are on Monday night, and when we have board members join and leave, we tend to go there to thank them for their service. But because of Veterans Day, they're meeting tonight instead of last night. So I just thought it'd be appropriate to take the time to thank outgoing school board members Elizabeth Reuter and Robin Merkley for their service to the community. They put their heart and soul into what they did, and they will be missed.
Thank you, Gary. That's appropriate. So thank you to each and every one that ran. I think we can all agree we're kind of glad that we don't have to have our favorite sports show or game show interrupted by all of the ads trying to convince us to do this or that. So at least those are gone, and the neighborhoods look so cleaner with all of the signs down. So there's two things that we can all agree on, but in a couple years we'll rev it up again, and that's what makes America great. So,
And
Madam
Mr.
Davis.
Mayor, I meant to also highlight
Yes.
the Stuff the Bus, that you have the opportunity November 30th and December 7th, 9 to 3, in the Walmart parking lot to donate unwrapped toys for the Stuff the Bus toy drive. And then also, Mr. Mayor, just, of course, folks want to get a front row seat, but you mentioned the tree lighting would be at 6, and it's actually, I believe, at 6:30.
6:30,
If they
okay.
get there at 6, they can get a front row seat, but
Okay.
want to let them know that the fun won't happen until 6:30.
Thank you for correcting that. I'm going to do something that I need to do. We have a lot of guests here, and I understand that the people that have arrived are a part of a carpenters group, correct? And carpentry is a skill that I've never been able to really accomplish much. The more nails, I think, probably the better, but you guys would not probably think that. And so I'm going to, if our city attorney will allow me to do such, because we did have a phone call today to reopen our public comment
Yeah, there
period.
should be a motion and a second to allow for the reopening
Okay,
of the.
do I have a motion and a second to allow?
I'll move to reopen public comment.
I'll second.
Second. Can we just all vote, or do you want to do a roll call? I don't know, Mr. Sid.
Yeah, there should be a vote.
Okay. Madam Clerk, could you please call?
Councilmember Alowitz?
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedel?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So I don't know who actually called in today, but I was advised, and I'm sure the 210 was crazy and traffic and everything, but we want to give you the chance to come up and share. You'll be on the clock, 3 minutes time frame, and anybody else that wants to join you, if they want to come up, we don't want you to drive out here and not feel like that you're heard and welcome. So, sir, just give us your name, please.
Well, appreciate you, the city of Glendora, and you guys having us here. Thank you for the hospitality, right?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're just here, trying to build relationships with the cities that are in our area, and we're just trying to create opportunities for our members. These members are always looking for work. Obviously, a carpenter runs out of work because they work themselves out of a job. So with having this many carpenters and showing that we could build projects, we build hospitals, we could build parking structures, hotels, and I know in the city of Glendora there's not that much of hotels or stuff like that. It's more residential. We understand that, but we wanted to come here and kind of build a relationship with the mayor and with the city of Glendora.
Sure.
So that we possibly could work here in the city of Glendora. It's always good to be close to home, so that we're able to go to these our kids' baseball games or
Right.
or practices, whatever it is. But we do thank you guys for having us here, and sorry about being late.
That's
I know
all right.
We're a little late. We kind of probably disturbed the meeting, but we do appreciate you guys having us here.
Well, we appreciate you guys, and as you may or may not know, we've seen a lot of your, I don't know of these guys, but a lot of your trade work. The goal line has, been built here, and it's they've been doing a tremendous amount of work now for how many years, Adam? 4 or 5 years, maybe 6 years. Carpenters are out there. I've walked that track station that is being built, and the skill that that trade has is incredible, and we appreciate that. The good news is we are seeing building starting to go upwards. Adam can tell you that the permits are higher in recent weeks than have ever been to build. And so I believe that there's ample work that's going to be here. I don't have any clue as to how we can kind of work with you, but I'm sure that our staff does and they would welcome highly trained folks to come and do all that work. So, Adam, do you have anything to say about how a connection can be made, or how our building is starting to ramp up?
Yeah, it's thanks for coming out tonight. Welcome, gentlemen. So typically on the large projects, the various groups work with the developers and builders to establish those relationships. Oftentimes, service unions or other groups come to the city to let themselves be known and to say that they're here to work and do work in the city. So I believe that's what you're doing this evening. And as the mayor indicates, there are some housing developments which are in process along the Arrow Highway corridor. We also have around the Gold Line Station, just south on the south end of Glendora Avenue and Route 66, pretty significant potential development in that area, and some other housing developments, especially off of Barranca on a former Azusa Unified School District. So as the mayor indicates, while it is largely infill here, there is some development that will occur. And so however that works out, city does mostly the development projects on this side, doesn't really deal too much on the labor aspect, but I'm sure if you guys are in the area, that's something that will be considered.
Good. All right, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Gentlemen, thank you. And best of luck, and we appreciate you. All right, I will also close our public comment period on this item. And, okay, Adam, I think it's your turn to give any updates that you want to give.
Good evening. We've had several conversations about elections this evening, but the city did have one citywide election, and that was for Measure Z, which, if approved, would take the place of Measure H at the county if Measure H was expired or repealed. It does look like Measure A at the county, which will repeal, Measure H will pass. The city's Measure Z measure appears to have passed with 57.5% of the vote. 34,000 registered voters about in the city of Glendora, and more than 24,000 voted on Measure Z, which is just an incredible number. Just for perspective, when we passed Measure E on a special election, there were a total of 6,500 votes. So 18,000 more votes, and the residents are putting their faith in the city to spend the $3 million we estimate will come out of Measure Z. We should start seeing it, I believe, the second quarter of calendar year 25. So we'll make sure we're back before council, largely doing our next 2-year budget cycle on how that funding should be spent. So pretty well on that note. And as many of you know, or all of you know, and most of those watching know, Councilmember Boyer decided not to run for re-election, and so we did have an election in his district with 4 individuals running. It does appear that Shauna Elias will be the council member elect, and so staff has been in contact and with her and trying to get her set up in time. And so at our next city council meeting in December, we will do the swearing in and say our thank yous to Councilmember Boyer, and also do our annual rotation and or election of a new mayor and mayor pro tem. So at the December meeting, we'll have a much more robust update on the election and actual results from the state level on items like Prop 36 and some of the bond initiatives in water and education, to local county measures, Prop G, which is an expansion of elected officials, including a sort of a president, CEO type of position at the county, and election of a new DA. So look forward for a more robust update at that time, but locally, we are, again, incredibly thankful of the residents for putting their trust in us to spend their tax dollars in a meaningful way to help the city of Glendora. So we remain thankful and incredibly appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to be clear, none of us were looking for sales tax to go up, but we knew, or at least we had a pretty good sense that Measure A would pass, and that by doing that, that the sales tax would in fact go up, and we wanted to keep our share here and do work here. And so that is what Z was, and so that will happen. And so we're happy that at least we achieved that goal, and that will go for roads and infrastructure and all kinds of different things. And it'll be kept here, and so we're happy that that's going to occur. So we just wanted to make that, clear. Adam, thank you. Danny, anything that you want to report out?
No, our office doesn't have anything. Thanks, Mayor.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. All right, we'll move on to item 4. We have really a select group of esteemed people from the San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, affectionately called COG. And Michael is I think the key rep from us serving on that group and with that group. I know that Gary, until he chose to step down, was also on the housing, element of that group, and we appreciated all of his help there. But it is great to have you all here. I'll leave it up to you to introduce your team. And we also know that you're here to celebrate a birthday, 30 years. I know. And I knew the minute I said that I was stepping into something. But 30 compared to my age of 70 is still very, very young. So we want to celebrate that too. And Michael will, when you guys are done, he'll express that. But that's great, and we appreciate the 30 years that you guys have been around and helping us. So with that, it's yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of Glendora City Council. My name is Brielle Salazar. I'm the manager of the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust, and I'm joined here tonight by Roy Choi, manager of Transportation. Also have Zarina Mapes, Stephanie Hernandez, who's a resident of Glendora, and we have one of our analysts, Lucia, who's joined us here as well. So we're here tonight to give you an update on the San Gabriel Valley Council of Government, or COG, as you mentioned, current programs and recent accomplishments. So if we can go to our next slide. I'd like to start by acknowledging our leadership, starting with President Tim Hepburn from the City of Laverne, First Vice President Ed Reese from the City of Claremont, Second Vice President April Verlato from the City of Arcadia, and Third Vice President Corey Moss from the City of Industry. We appreciate their time and dedication to advancing regional initiatives. We can go to our next slide. In the next few slides, I'll cover a variety of our programs, starting with our sustainability programs. The City of Glendora participates in several of the COG's programs designed to ensure safe and clean environments for all residents of the San Gabriel Valley. I'd like to highlight the Neighborhood Coyote Program, which provides an integrated regional approach to coyote management and assists the public with navigating wildlife interactions. On our next slide, Next, I'll cover our transportation projects. The SGV-COG is committed to moving our region forward, improving safety and efficiency for pedestrians, cyclists, vehicle travel, and public transportation. The SGV-COG is currently improving the 5760 confluence to reduce traffic and accidents in one of the busiest truck freight routes in the entire country. And the City of Glendora has received project funding through Measure M Subregional Program, which I'll describe a bit more in a few slides. On our next slide, the SGV-COG believes that all residents deserve a place to call home and provides a variety of programs to meet regional and individual city needs. Here, I'd like to highlight the REAP 1.0 Affordable Housing Incubator Program, which provides technical assistance to advance housing projects, and the City of Glendora participated in this program to evaluate a site for development. Regional projects included ADU pre-approved plans, inclusionary housing analysis, and the development of the Trust's revolving loan fund program. We'll be working with cities in early 2025 to launch the REAP 2.0 Affordable Housing Incubator. So if you have more sites and projects to analyze, we are here. On our next slide, the SGV-COG supports our neighbors in needs through its regional outreach and supportive services and the SGV Care Mobile Crisis Program. The SGV Works program supports job training at our interim housing sites and beyond, and Village 143 provides donations to those in need and organizes volunteer opportunities. I'd like to thank Councilmember Karen Davis for participating in the Habitat for Humanity Civic Leader Build earlier this year. On our next slide, a few accomplishments I'd like to highlight from fiscal year 23-24 are the groundbreakings of the Montebello Corridor and Turnbull Canyon grade separation projects, which will increase safety in the region, the opening of 3 food recovery hubs, which will reduce food waste, and housing 88 clients through direct outreach. The Housing Trust supported the development of 242 units through its revolving loan fund and supported 16 affordable home ownership opportunities. On our next slide, I want to share some city-specific highlights. So the City of Glendora received $6.6 million in Sustainable Multimodal Improvement Project, or SMIP, funds for improvements along Foothill Boulevard, including bike lanes and crossing improvements. The COG also provided $50,000 in support for unhoused residents, which could cover things like application fees, deposits, rental assistance, and motel vouchers. And as I mentioned, the city participated in the Affordable Housing Incubator and received technical assistance. On our next slide, we'll look ahead to fiscal year 24-25, which is already underway, and the COG has completed its broadband study and will complete its community wildfire protection plan. We'll begin implementation of bus corridor improvements to prepare for the 2028 Olympics, and we'll support an estimated 120 affordable housing units through our revolving loan fund and 67 interim housing units through our regional housing development program. On our next slide, this is our Policy Committee Wall of Fame, which thanks all of the members for their participation. And here I'd like to acknowledge the policy and committee members in the room, including City Manager Steering Committee member Adam Raymond, EE&R member Michael Alavos, and Homelessness Committee member Karen Davis. And of course, I'd like to actually go to the next slide to congratulate Regional Housing Trust Board member Gary Boyer. Thank you, Director Boyer, for 4 years of service to the San Gabriel Valley Regional Housing Trust. As an inaugural board member, you have been part of all of the Trust's accomplishments, including financing for more than 800 units. And your legacy will continue through the revolving loan fund and affiliated nonprofit House SGV that were created during your term. So I have a symbolic gift to give you on behalf of the Housing Trust, which is a giving key, and this is representative of all the doors that you've helped open for residents in need. And this last slide is my very last slide, which is just a thank you and opens it up for questions, but we'd love to get a photo op with Gary. Thank you.
Here, let's get a picture, yeah.
You can all come up, and then I can get your phone, and I'll take a picture for you guys. On the count of 3, 1, 2, 3.
I'll reach out to you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Before we turn it over to Michael, are there questions or comments or anything that any of us, Karen, do you want to?
No, I was just going to say thank you to all of you, the amazing work that you do at the COG. So we appreciate it.
Thank you. David, anything? No? Gary?
If I could, I got to tell you, and I've shared this with you guys before, one of the things sometimes the general public doesn't see the work that you do. They see what we do here, they see what city staff does, but a lot of the work that takes place in the COG and organizations like you is what keeps things moving forward and gets us all to work together on a regional level. So I appreciate and was honored to be part of that, and just want to publicly thank you guys for everything that you do.
Great, thank you. Michael?
So to extend on what Gary just said, if you want to envision what the COG is, just think of Los Angeles County in a smaller package. Because you folks do mostly everything that, except for maybe sanitation, as far as what is taking care of our valley. What, 32 cities that are represented? We have really good discussions and debates and things of that nature. And staff is incredible. I mean, if there's something that you need, staff is right there. They take care of it right away. Great group of folks. I'm so blessed to be part of that. I know we have some really robust discussions, but staff is on it on a regular basis, and very proud to be part of it. So with that, we have a certificate. David and I were at your 30th anniversary, and it was really well done, particularly the cartoons. They were amazing. They were a big hoot. It was a great group of folks, and it was a good showing, and we both had a really good time with that. So with that, we have a certification of recognition. San Gabriel Valley Council of Governments, 30th anniversary. Congratulations on 30 years of dedicated services to the member cities of San Gabriel Valley. We thank you for serving the community and our interests. So if you can come, all of you, come on up, take a picture in front of the seal. Don't be bashful. Thank you so much.
Graduating.
You guys are the important ones.
Come on, guys, gals.
Thank you, sir.
Suck it up. Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you again. Appreciate everything.
All right, thank you. Welcome, and continue to keep up the amazing work. All right, consent calendar. We can take care of these from 5 to 9 with one motion. Is
I'll
there a
move.
motion?
I'll move items 5 through 9 on the consent.
Okay.
I will second.
Second, does anybody have any comments or anything? No? Okay, Madam Clerk, there's been a first by Michael, a second by David. Would you please call our roll?
Councilmember Elois,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedenthal,
Yes.
Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, thank you. All right, we're on to item 10, and Captain Gold is going to come up and give us an update on some enforcement things and community services. And I know that Mark is back there. And but Captain Gold, it's great to have you here, and we're looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Thompson, Mayor Pro Tem Friedenthal, esteemed council. Oops. Tonight, I'm going to be presenting on the community preservation staffing needs at the September 10th council meeting. I was directed to come back with a more robust item for you to review. Since 2016, community preservation has been supervised by a support services supervisor and 2 full-time code enforcement or community preservation officers who work with a variety of city departments and agencies within Los Angeles County. This is the historical levels that were previously provided for you. Over the last year, we had a new community service officer that was hired due to some staffing changes to fill a vacancy. Due to training and a second community preservation, having our second community preservation officer with that officer and some protected family leave, effectively for the majority of this last year, I've had 1 community preservation officer that was been available to respond to calls, hence the Monday through Thursday and some Friday coverage. Due to current and recent staffing changes that have just happened within the last month, I now have 2 fully trained community service officers community preservation officers that are able to respond Monday through Saturday, 410 schedule, and 2 Sundays a month, which is providing that extra level of service. For historical activity, as you can see, the community preservation officers have been extremely active this last year. Since the report was completed, they've gone to an additional 30 vendor calls within the city, conducted 2 directed enforcements, one of which was on 11/8, and 10 vendors were contacted. 2 were cited for violating the code at that time, and the other was on 11/1. During that time, it was a Saturday for Day of the Dead. We had 20 vendors that were contacted throughout the day. 6 were permitted. All of the unpermitted vendors that were contacted that was the first contact, they were advised of the GMC. Everyone complied and they were sent on their way. We didn't have any additional issues or problems with them after we educated them about what was required within the city for that day. In addition to all the vending calls since that time, we've also continued to respond to our regular calls on that day-to-day basis and issued 2 more administrative citations for residential violations that have not been corrected. Historically, community preservation has been reactive to a certain extent, and that has been for the needs of the community and the direction of the council, and obviously proactive for any hazards or things that directly impact the public. To kind of understand the process, once the location has been identified for violating a GMC and the property owner has been given adequate time to correct that notice of the violation, a citation can be issued. Citations can only be issued 1 time a week, so once per week, if the violation's not corrected when they go back out to do their follow-up. As far as vending citations go, those can only be issued once a day once I have identified the violation. If there's any violation of the law, where that's maybe a municipal code or an infraction, that type of thing, those can be issued on site each and every single time we see them. So there's the difference between your administrative citations and your criminal violations. Just to summarize for you, I threw in some of their typical duties. This is not all-encompassing. They're very busy throughout the day, trying to manage their caseload, what the needs of the city is at that time. There's always something new that comes up that might pull them away. An officer could identify a problem location. There could be an emergency call that comes in that's identified by staff or the public themselves where they need to respond that might pull them away from their daily duties. We try to arrange their day that they have time to be at the front counter doing their paperwork, answering the calls from the public and any questions that they may have, as well as being out in the field to provide those enforcement activities. So as you could see, based off of the numbers in the report, over the last year, community preservation officers have been responsive to the needs within the community and prioritize the calls and cases effectively. Despite our staffing challenges, our average is right on par with the last 5 years. We're currently working that 4-10 schedule with coverage Monday through Saturdays and the 2 Sundays a month. In reviewing these overall statistics and comparing the averages, it is staff's recommendation that we have sufficient resources and personnel to accomplish the goals and vision based on the needs of the community, the direction of the council, and we don't recommend adding any additional personnel to Community Preservation Division at this time. With that recommendation from staff, there is no fiscal impact and no environmental determination as well. Thank you very much for allowing me to present today. I appreciate your time. Oops, there we go. Do you have any questions?
Captain Gold, thank you. Questions? Gary, you want to start this time?
Well, you know, one question I have we seen recently, the last few years, any kind of an uptick in issues that we may have had? You've been here for quite a while. Have we seen much change in the issues when it comes to code enforcement?
Just in general?
Yeah, just in general throughout the city. There's always hot spots of things that pop up, but
The biggest push for us this last year that we've seen the uptick in, and you could see it based off the statistics, was the vendor calls. The other calls, I haven't seen any large fluctuation in what we typically get. It could be from, the weeds to just a, rundown house, some signage issues at businesses. It's a large variety, but I haven't seen any specific hotspot outside of the vending issues.
And then besides the vending, when it comes to issues with residents, a typical process with that, if it was weed abatement or a sign that's been placed improperly or something, what's a typical procedure for that?
Let's take weed abatement because that's a more tangible than a sign.
Okay.
Signs are typically a little bit lower level and easier to resolve. So for weed abatement, I would go out to, or we would go out to that residence, contact them, let them know that there's either been a complaint or an observation. We see that they're not in compliance. They would be given that notice to correct that violation, and they'd be given adequate time. So that adequate time can vary based off the violation. So whatever we deem that adequate time to be, typically it's between 2 weeks to 30 days, depending on what the violation is, and then code enforcement will go back out again, evaluate whether or not there's any progress, or if the violation has been corrected, that case is then closed. If there's progress, we continue to check back in. At a certain point, if their progress stops, would be when we'd switch to the next level, which would be to do those administrative citations.
Okay, so just to be clear, it's not like we're running around writing tickets on somebody immediately. We're trying to work with residents whenever we have an issue.
Yes, sir. We constantly
Okay.
try to educate prior to getting to that level of needing to cite someone.
Okay, appreciate it. Thank you.
Michael?
Thank you, Captain. I appreciate it. You're right. We need to find balance. That's really key and important. So under page 162, under the process, is this the complete process? And I'm going to tie this in with something else. I'm a little twixt with code enforcement and community preservation. I guess they're somewhat one and the same.
It's the same.
One and the same, but it says housed in the police department, but we have community development that actually helps write some of these things. And I looked online on the police manual, and I didn't see anything for code enforcement in there unless I missed it because it's a big document. It's a really big document. Where are the policies and procedures housed for code enforcement?
So code enforcement is responsible for enforcing a variety of different codes, one of which is the municipal code. That's why community development is so involved in that, is because we don't write those codes or do the actual recommendation, like full recommendations for those codes. We get a little bit of feedback opportunity when things are presented, but typically we're not from the ground up writing those. It depends on what that violation, what we're looking to correct or change within the municipal code. So that's why it's community development for that. they're also called in when there's some building issues. Sometimes something will come out of maybe a weed abatement or this house is dilapidated. They'll go out there and they'll identify, hey, it looks like we have an unpermitted addition here. So it starts at that point. So they don't have the same codes that you typically think of. Their code volume is the municipal code that we mainly go out and enforce. And when it raises to a level outside of that, then other departments step in. The police department for any kind of criminal violation, building department for building code violations. So it's a starting point for a lot of those things.
So I guess maybe I should rephrase. The staff report shows a list of items of how you do the process, if you will. I'm looking to see if you have that encapsulated like you have in your police manual. It tells you what you can and can't do in the procedures and processes. And I don't see that I don't see that anywhere. I can't find that anywhere. unless I don't-
Councilman, if I may, it's actually in your municipal code.
I understand that, but as the municipal code, do they take that and turn it into a policy and procedure or a procedure? Because we write the ordinances and things of that nature, and then that sits there and you have to go find it.
Yeah, I think we're conflating two different issues here. So one is the day-to-day process that we must follow under state law. Another one would be an administrative procedure, and I'll let the captain explain why it is that sworn staff, for example, have certain rules that are under the police chief's
Sure.
rule and regulation. But I think we're conflating, because it's in the police department, that there's automatically this manual that's associated with community preservation. That's just not the case. So community preservation, as we call it, or code enforcement, is a division, as stated in the staff report, that has existed in community development previously and in the police department now. That is the same in almost every city where it exists in one or the other for a wide variety of reasons. In this specific case, it moved to the police department many years ago as part of better oversight over that division that could be applied to, and better resource overview, sort of extra support staff that can go out on some of those key issues that came up. So is there a specific question the captain can answer for you about what you're looking for in those policies?
You're answering to a degree in the sense that we have the police, it's housed in the police department, but it's standalone as code enforcement, and they have to use the municipal code and what we decide to do up here. How does that get culminated into a document instead of having to fish around for the different ordinances or
What
municipal
is
code?
it that you're looking for, sir?
Nothing, if there's a document, a procedure that they follow that references the ordinances.
It's all set forth in the municipal code and under state law. So the city staff and the police department follow the municipal code procedures for abatement and code enforcement issues.
Okay, so you don't take that and parse it out?
There's
and
no
just have one
separate,
document?
yeah.
Okay. So when emails come in from the community, because I know we have a third party that for an anonymous tips or whatever, that's by a third party, but if you get an email directly, how's that handled? Is it done by like a spreadsheet that gets followed and like a task orientated? How is that managed?
So, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Archibald, as the emails come in, the staff receives them, they look to see what that certain complaint is. They will go out to the location, verify whether or not there is a complaint, an actual violation where the complaining party is saying that there is. If there is, a case is already generated, and then that case would be generated from an outside person. If we have a contact person, that goes into our system, so that way we know and we can track it. If they request contact, we'll reach back out to them and contact them and let them know to ensure that they're getting the level of service that they're looking for that. So it depends on whether or not there's an actual violation there as to what happens. I don't have a spreadsheet for each complaint that comes in. We do have a specific spreadsheet that for when we documented the political signs and every complaint that came in for those.
So how is it really managed? How do you keep track of it?
You talking about track it when there's a code violation, or
Is that how it's being managed?
if there's an active code case, yes, we can go back and look, but sometimes calls come in through dispatch, sometimes calls come in all over the place. So
How is it registered and tracked, and when it's done, it's removed?
there's actually a case management system that documents that.
So we have that in place?
Yeah, so we have it in Trackit and in the CAD system. Like it depends on where it's coming from as to where it goes into, and sometimes it's in both.
Is it a public document?
Someone could ask for a public records request, and they can get some things that are in there. Open, active investigations are not releasable per the Public Records
So,
Act.
yeah, and I would just add to that, as part of the ERP system that the city council is invested in through Tyler, one of the last items that will come up is a work order management system, which will sort of track an online CRM system that will be able to track top submissions through that will able to tie a little more data together as it relates to potholes and code enforcement cases, so on and so forth. So as you may imagine, there are some reported cases that are just don't rise to the level of an actual violation, and we respond accordingly, but the actual violations are tracked within the permitting system itself, and will be so under the new permitting system as well.
Okay. On page 164, it talks about having to be fluent in different languages, particularly Spanish. Is that a requirement by the state, and what about other languages? Does that inhibit you from reaching out to some of these folks that may be in violation? That you have to have a certified linguist?
No, we don't have to have a certified linguist. It does help, whether that's through community preservation or for our officers. It's always helpful to have someone who's fluent in any other language.
Sure.
Typically, what we've found with our current vendors along the Grand Corridor, the majority of them, Spanish is their primary language. So when we do directed enforcement, we try to ensure that we have someone who speaks Spanish that can help, because our main goal is to educate before we ever do any type of enforcement. And we want to make sure they understand what the violation is, what the code is, and what's required of them.
But not required by law,
It's not required by law.
but it's helpful.
It's very helpful. It's very helpful.
Great. I know that some property owners have letters on file that you have access to if you can go onto the property and take care of business from a police department standpoint. Is that readily available to code enforcement? Because you have it on the police side that you can go on with a disturbance or whatever. Is that something that code enforcement has access to?
So if you're referring to the trespass letters?
That or, yeah, yes.
So the trespass letters would not be handled by community preservation because that's not their role. Any kind of trespass that's occurring on a property, if code enforcement or community preservation is aware of that, they would have an officer respond and address that subject or individual that's trespassing.
Okay, so like say if somebody set up a tent and start selling stuff and and then you had a letter on file, how would you handle something like that?
We'd have the officers contact the person to advise them, and then at that point, depending on what the property owner wants, depends on our action, because that would be a private person's arrest, sir.
Oh, okay, great.
And Captain, that's more of the criminal versus municipal code violation aspect of the two positions.
Yes.
And just one thing, really quick, council member, when we were talking about policies, we were talking about publicly available policies that you're talking about. So the
Yes.
Code Enforcement Division does have SOPs that are written, but those are internal documents for staff.
Okay, so they do have them? then?
Yes. I thought we were talking about public, so not as to confuse apples and oranges here. Internally, yes, a lot of departments do have SOPs.
Yeah, because it would be challenging to go to the municipal code and parse that out when you need it. I only have I think one or two last questions here. Like with the marketplace, for example, you have, I believe most of that's all public roads, the internal roads, but maybe some of them might not be when they're going to go through a parking lot. How do you handle, this is more, I guess, with police than the code enforcement, if you had a red curb or something like that, is that something that would be a police matter necessarily, or would it be as private property? How would you differentiate the two, knowing the different streets, if they're public or private?
So I don't understand your question about the red curb, though.
So
What kind of violation are we talking about?
Well, I'm using it as an example. Over the marketplace, I don't know if all the internal roads are public or some of them might be private. And do you know that the difference? Is there a map? I'm using that as an example. It could be around, different streets within the city.
So yeah, we're aware of what roadways are private, and the majority of roadways are still, if red curb, for example, down in the marketplace, they have the appropriate signage, and if someone parks in the red zone, a handicap violation, any of those types of things, that would be handled by the police department, not our community preservation department, because that would be a violation of the vehicle code. So we would enforce that from the police side, from the more of the criminal
Sure.
side of things, because that's what that is.
Makes sense. Okay, I believe that's, oh, and this for you, Adam, perhaps. When we're up here and we have our do policies, and there's a line there about what we can do as far as police department, as far as code enforcement. They're housed in the police department, but code enforcement is not police department. So if we were to do a policy to affect code enforcement, is that appropriate because they're housed in the police department?
It depends. So the city council can't usurp state law, for example.
Correct.
Nor could the city council usurp the municipal code without amending the municipal code, and any of those changes would run through Danny. But code enforcement in and of itself is enforcing the ordinances. And here, while there is some proactive, largely is, as we've had this discussion this evening and in previous meetings, sort of how the division has historically operated in the staffing. So it depends, because is it a philosophical policy or is it detailed policy? We can't tell staff what to do and how to do it, right? That's not what we do from the council
Right.
perspective. We set
Policy.
general policies, yeah. So some employee-related measures. So it would really just depend on what the council wants to do, and then staff could tell you how best to affect that change.
That brings me back to reason why I was going for the SOPs, things of that nature.
Yeah.
And how that bounces off over municipal code. Look at how
The
they do
city
their
council,
job.
for example, can't just say cite everyone $100.
Sure.
You know, we have to follow the administrative penalties section, and then there's also state law that we have to follow in timing of those citations. That's just one example. The city council can urge staff not to, issue warnings per se, but you can't really mandate that because you have to have that wiggle room out in the field for compliance. And so really what we're after is compliance.
So you're
right?
saying it's complicated.
Yeah, but it really just depends on what the will of the council is, and I think staff would be able to tell you, and the city attorney and the captain will be able to tell you, like, hey, day-to-day wise, this could work, and the city attorney could tell you, yeah, but state law tells you otherwise, and I would just sit here and laugh, but no, sir, it really depends on what it is that we're looking to do, and then we would have to come back to you with options, unless it was a simple solution, but yes, it's complicated.
Thank you. Thank you, Shelley.
All right, thank you, Michael. Karen, anything?
You do an outstanding job with that department, and I concur with your recommendation that I think you know best what your staffing levels are, and the way that you have reorganized those days of the week based upon your current staffing, I think will meet the needs of residents as they want to reach out Monday through Saturday and occasionally Sunday. So thank you for that, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, ma'am. Sundays by appointment only when they are in there, by the way, because the doors are not open for records department. So if someone does need to come in on a Sunday that they're there, it's by appointment. They are available, but just appointment is better.
Yeah, it's one of those very gray areas, very, it's not as easy as, let's go write a ticket because Shelley's driving 65 in a 45 zone. Code enforcement is one of those, it's in the eye of the beholder, that Mendel has weeds in his yard, but maybe he thinks that's beautiful grass. So that's a very difficult area to police. And so I think the balance that you have struck helps to maintain quality of life, but not, everybody's looking over your shoulder of, clean up your yard or whatever it may be. So thank you.
Thank you.
All right, David.
Thank you, Captain. And I wish to go on record as acknowledging that we've had many conversations. We've spent several hours working through and I think mutually learning. So I've learned much and they've accepted much. So I value that opportunity and I clearly thank you. My vision is clearly to work to achieve a progressive program that helps us all be good neighbors and help us be have pride in our community and work to have us all be that way. And the best part is, let's be good neighbors. And I'm certainly not in favor of having to go out and do sites or look for a revenue source. I don't think that's the solution. I agree, educate first and encourage willful compliance. That's very good. I guess I have many faults. One of them is impatience. So when I see things in my casual wandering around and I see things repeatedly or the same issues repeatedly and wonder, well, am I the only one that sees it? That kind of raises a flag to me and encourage that we have lots of eyes out there that are inspecting and securing our town, spending a lot more time doing that than I do in a given week. I would hope that they might take a little more of a proactive approach if they see something and not say, oh, that's just the way it is, but could that be better? We have lots of landscape opportunities, and we shared some of those that are frankly traffic or pedestrian safety concerns. And when those persist for months upon end, I thought, wow, can't we do something with that? So I encourage some greater proactivity in that area. I have seen great results in some new improvements on the Grand Avenue sidewalk vendor approach. I mean, that's been huge difference recently. I know that Public Works has put in some effort to make some changes there to help ensure that security, and they've seemed to be working. So it doesn't go unnoticed. Thank you for that. And then when there is a vendor, if compliance, the preservation folks get to stop and look and say, hey, here's what we're doing. But a curiosity, if I were to drive around and see 3 or 4 vendors, how would I recognize that a vendor is being compliant just as a passerby? Because I also have a selfish motivation. While I'm not a business person in town, I'm looking out after our compliant businesses and want to give them an even chance at being successful in their business. So if I see a vendor, is there a way I can tell that they're doing it correctly?
At this point, as a citizen, unless you've read the municipal code and know exactly what they're supposed to do, you wouldn't know whether or not they're following the GMC or if they're a permitted vendor, but we're working to resolve that, and that should be presented to you by Mr. Kugel on December 10th.
Okay, wow, that's encouraging. Thank you. I knew there was some more coming. I think one of our codes does in fact share that a street vendor should have a visible business license and identification. It's in our code, so hopefully that's something we can lean upon. Those are good. When our preservation folks are working the streets and going around, are they given a priority as to what items are important to look at or what aren't, given all the ordinances and different codes that they have to be aware of and lean on?
So they continually prioritize as they see things, the calls that come in. So it's going to depend. If you call to tell me there's oil running down the street, that's obviously going to take priority over everything else, right? We can't have that getting into the drains. So it's up to them to manage their caseload and decide based off of what's presented to them each day how they're going to tackle their day. We don't micromanage that. We allow them to go out there and enforce what they need to enforce, educate as they need to educate, and prioritize their cases to ensure that they're most effective throughout the day.
And with, you mentioned staffing, are we confident that there's some new adjustments coming? So I recognize that, I heard that. Are we confident that they can recognize and address things in a timely manner, given the new staffing versus continuing to go by it? 'Cause I still see things that are old issues, and I'm wondering, I'm not ready to give up on that or say there's no need. There's trust and verify later type of opportunity, but I would want to hope that it might work, but are we going to be a little more proactive and be able to address some of those issues that we're continuing to drive past today?
Yes, they are proactive in the violations that they do see. Again, as we talked about, some of those things are in the eye of the beholder, depending on what level that they're at. And when we get complaints, we do go follow up on them. depending on what that is. So as they're going to their regular calls, if they see something, they'll loop back around, make contact with those residences, take care of those other violations that they do see. So it's just going to depend on what level and what they see. And like some of the things that we discussed, those are things that they are not going to address.
Okay, different visions, and if we can agree to, I hear you. Okay, I have an idea, but I think I'd like to defer to your comments before I share that.
Mine will be very short. I think that you've given us an excellent report. I agree with Karen that I would lean on you and your team to know staffing best. And I just appreciate the excellent job that you guys are doing, and keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, I would like to ask that we continue this item so that we can wait for community development's language input on things to help see what tools are going to be available to help with the code enforcement group's continuing work, and maybe not make a choice tonight, but rather see if we can't see what that language might be and monitor some of the continued performance over the next few weeks. And maybe there's nothing to do. Maybe there might be, hopefully there is nothing to do, but perhaps there will.
Can I just ask for a little bit of clarification on that, Mayor Pro Tem? So the item before you this evening is to discuss and provide recommendations or receive whatever action the council wants to take pursuant to the code enforcement officer provision. An item that comes forward on changes to an ordinance related to vendors would be specifically to the vendor enforcement. So depending on what a perceived action may be, you may have to come back with another agendized item entirely. If you're hoping to continue the item to talk about staffing, I may recommend that at the meeting where we look at the ordinance, that if additional staffing is going to be requested, that recommendation be made during that specific item. But I'm trying to determine how this item would be tied to that item in a manner which allows the council to do what it would want on that meeting per se.
Understood. Just not trying to not close the door on the potential that we might need staffing based on
Gotcha.
what some of those rules and those language items might be. That's
Okay.
all I was leaning towards.
Thank you.
There is no recommendation in that report to add staffing. It is just strictly for the municipal code and to address some of the changes within the ordinance for safety purposes for our public and our vendors.
Okay.
But that request, didn't that come up through this whole dialogue of code enforcement for what Jeff is putting together?
Yeah, if based on the sidewalk vending ordinance changes that are presented to you on December 10th, if you feel that might entail a need for a greater community preservation staffing or changes made, you could seek for a future agenda item to be placed on the council's agenda at the next meeting.
That's what I was going to recommend, that we receive and file this report, and if based upon that future report, it's felt there's a need for that, then make that more case-specific at a later time, rather than associated with this item.
So is Jeff's actions agendized for the 10th of December?
Yeah. So, or at least the draft ordinance for city council review. So what a typical action would be, and maybe this is helpful just from a procedural standpoint. If the direction from the council tonight was, say, come back with a proposal to amend the budget to add a staffing position, right, in the current budget, staff would return with a subsequent item referencing this item, the discussion that took place, with specific language to appropriate funding and add an FTE. Because we'd have to amend a position resolution, we'd have to amend the budget. Those are procedural actions, so it wouldn't be really pursuant to this item. Any action like that would come at a meeting to be determined in the future. So The good news is for the council, if that is something you are considering, any ordinance that's adopted by the council would have a first, second reading, and then 30 days before it went into place. So you would have the procedural time to talk about staffing and for staff to make a determination on how that funding would be done. If you want to link those two items, and maybe that's not the intent,
Well,
but
no,
procedurally, I think you would have time not having to continue the item per se, but a recommendation, as the city attorney said, stemming from that conversation could be to return with an item to do that specific thing. So,
Understood.
yeah.
And I think that certainly looking at the language, the new tools, the additional tools, if you will, and it also gives us time for some performance metrics to be observed and maybe make a determination if there's a need for change at that time. So I think that can work. Very good.
Gary, I see your light on.
No, so is that a motion, Karen, to receive and file?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay.
So just, well, you second that. What Jeff is going to be bringing back his shop, that was a direct result of the first meeting that we had, though, correct?
That's
On this
correct.
topic.
That meeting coming back is to discuss a proposed ordinance to implement or to amend an ordinance. Well, yeah, to adopt an ordinance amending the municipal code section to add some additional tools and make some clarifications about licensing from a may have a license to shall have a license, that sort of thing. But that is a proposed action of the council specifically for street vending, not necessarily for staffing. But as the mayor pro tem points out, if there is a conversation to be had on staffing or wants to be had on staffing, it's likely not just germane to that, but a greater sort of proactive approach in code enforcement. Based on comments, that action would have to come back to city council because procedurally we would have to amend the personnel area. So we would have to come back anyway. That's all.
And that's a narrow focus for the agendized item.
Yeah, but anything under the auspice of discussion, the item could be directed staff to come back with another action.
Well, and also, I think what Jeff's going to be addressing there is one of your questions about how can someone readily identify who's a permitted vendor and who's not.
yeah.
That some of that will also be there, which will answer some of the concerns that have been brought up.
Yeah, there's various changes that are being made. It's not just about licensing, it's also about enforcement, additional enforcement tools that are going to be proposed for the council to consider.
Beyond vendors?
No, it's
scope of
only
vendors.
the sidewalk vending ordinance of the city. But enforcement tools with respect to that are proposed to be modified.
All right, there's a motion been made by Davis and a second by Boyer. And we're ready to vote.
Councilmember Alowis,
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer,
Yes.
Councilmember Davis,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Freenall,
Yes, and thank
Mayor
you.
Thompson.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right. Well, Captain Gold, thank you. Appreciate that. Our thank you to our friends from COG. Thank you. All right. Okay, next item is a water report, and Russell is here to give us that. It's a timely update because winter feels like it's here, and at least it's cold. And now we just need to see if it's going to rain.
That's right.
So, Russell, it's great to have you here and give us an update on our efforts here. Thank you. Guys, thank you. Appreciate it, and best of luck. Thank you. Russell, this is not a reflection on
I was gonna
you
say.
in any way or
I haven't
water.
even started yet.
I just want to give you the confidence that it's not about you, but it's just the hour of the night and.
They're carpenters, not plumbers.
Yeah. They're carpenters and not plumbers.
Understandable.
All right, Russell. Thank
Okay.
you.
Good evening, Mayor
Good evening.
Thompson, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. I am here to present a report on the new state water conservation regulations. I'll endeavor to address the various components of the regulation, but given the complexity of these new laws, the presentation will serve as a general overview. Staff will return to give updates on compliance, timelines, reporting data, and any new programming related to the new regulations. On July 3rd, 2024, the California State Water Resources Control Board adopted Making Conservation a California Way of Life, which implements Assembly Bill 1668 and Senate Bill 606, both of which were signed into law back in 2018, to achieve long-term water use efficiency. The Making a Conservation a California Way of Life regulations establishes new standards for water conservation for all urban retail water suppliers, of which the city of Glendora is one. The new standards result in increasingly lower water budgets for all water use within a water agency's service area. The regulation changes the reduction requirements from the old 2020 baseline. It requires that water suppliers, not individuals or businesses, meet their urban water use objective. We, of course, will work with our customers to achieve the new budgets, but as a service area. We will and we have and will continue to reevaluate our existing rebates, incentives, and education programs to determine what more we can do to help customers use less water. So this is the formula. This is the urban water use objective. It calculates the necessary amount of water that the water board determines to be an efficient amount of water for water suppliers to supply their customers. Each water agency will have their own unique urban water use objective based on local population, indoor and outdoor water use, commercial and institutional water needs, and system losses. As you can see, in total, there are 3 water use standards, one for indoor residential, one for outdoor residential, and one for outdoor commercial, industrial, or institutional, or what I'll be referring to as CII, that have dedicated irrigation meters. There's one water loss standard and a variety of adjustments that are used to calculate each urban water supplier's overall budgets. Suppliers do not have to meet standards individually except for the water loss standard, as long as they meet the overall sum of these standards, which is known as the urban water use objective, or I'll just be referring to as the objective. Compliance with the objective is required beginning in 2025 and will have an annual reporting component. In addition, the urban water use objective, for every urban retail supplier, they'll need to comply with a set of CII performance measure standards. These performance measures are intended to enable water usage benchmarking per CII classification category, as well as establish best management practices for indoor and outdoor CII water use, regardless of whether or not there's a dedicated irrigation meter associated with that CII property. The best management practices might include outreach, rebates, surveys, turf removal programs. Even if an agency is meeting its objective, it still will have to comply with the CII performance measures. So now I'm going to briefly go through each of these standards and point out some of the relevant points. The indoor, this is the formula for the indoor residential water budget. Senate Bill 1157 was signed into law in September of 2022. The bill established residential indoor standards that progressively become more efficient through 2030. So for example, next year we will drop from 55 gallons per capita to 47 gallons per capita. The outdoor residential water budget consists of a supplier's residential landscape area multiplied by the efficiency standard and a climate factor that's reflective of the supplier's unique service area conditions. To help determine the water agency's outdoor residential water use budget, the Department of Water Resources provided each water supplier landscape area measurements in 2021. Updated data from the state will be provided later. DWR also provides the climate factors that are used in this calculation, and the landscape efficiency factor, the LEF, it's an efficiency factor determined by the State Water Board. It's proposed to decrease over time as presented in the table below. And just to kind of explain what this LEF, this landscape efficiency factor, is. It accounts for irrigation inefficiencies and plant water needs. As shown in the picture on the left, turf grass with sprinklers would have a higher LEF because that plant type has higher water needs, and that irrigation must apply more water to account for inefficiencies due to wind, spacing, slope, etc. The picture on the right shows a landscape with a lower LEF because it has climate-appropriate plants that use less water and a drip irrigation system that applies water very efficiently. However, there is still some turf left in that picture. Essentially, the lowest LEF standard that we'll be expecting to meet in 2040, the 0.55, means that for all residential landscapes in California, by 2040, they would be expected to have reduced their lawns to about 25 or less % of their total landscape. Similarly, the commercial, industrial, and institutional landscapes have an outdoor water budget, and those are specifically tied to connections served by a dedicated irrigation meter. So first, suppliers must distinguish between mixed-use meters, or one meter that measures both the indoor and the outdoor water use, from dedicated irrigation meters on commercial sites whose landscapes are subject to this water budget standard. These areas may include special landscape areas such as recreational areas, arboretums, and public pools. Special landscape areas are allotted the maximum water budget and an LEF of 1.0. However, the CII landscape areas have not yet been determined. The Department of Water Resources is currently mapping water agencies' CII landscape areas. This is expected to be completed in the next couple of years. The supplier will then need to identify and/or verify what areas are deemed special landscape area and add that to the urban water use objective total. In other words, the objective or target for our water agency will vary each year as more data is collected and supplied to the state. The water loss budget standard is unique in that it was originally regulated under prior independent 2015 legislation, Senate Bill 555. Therefore, compliance can be enforced individually for water loss, unlike the other standards within the framework. The water loss standard is the maximum allowable real water loss measured in gallons per connection per day for each supply system in an urban water retailer's service area. The water loss standard is used to calculate the annual maximum allowed water loss volume in gallons per system. This maximum is referred to as the water loss budget, and this is part of the overall water use objective. As I had mentioned before, the legislation also addresses other demands that were not included in the objective but are still subject to performance standards. Our Community Water Hero program is an example of how a supplier can offer a best management practice that helps commercial and institutional properties save water indoors. Variances. Adjustments to the objective can be made via variances, temporary provisions, and/or bonus incentives for potable reuse where applicable. A variance or temporary provision must receive prior approval by submitting a request to the State Water Board. In most cases, the associated additional water use for a variance for, say, using water for dust control on a horse corral, the total of that must actually represent 5% or more of the urban water use objective budget to be counted. So it's not, in our research that we've done with some of the variances that we could possibly be eligible for, we're not finding that we're reaching that 5% target. Furthermore, it's been published in the media that based on state data, Glendora will need to reduce its overall water use by approximately 43% by 2040 to comply with its objective. However, this is based on older data, and it does not factor in additional water allocations for those special landscape areas I mentioned earlier, nor does it factor in the forthcoming state-supplied CII landscape area measurements. As a result, The actual percent reduction target will likely change as updated data becomes available. The final reduction targets have yet to be determined. In addition, the state has just recently released a new reporting form that automates most of the annual reporting process. However, not all of the necessary data inputs are available, so we cannot yet calculate or project an accurate urban water use objective for next year or even 2040 based on the new template. The state is actually holding a workshop tomorrow on the new form, so hopefully we will be better informed as to how to calculate our objective for next year and the coming years. Notwithstanding, should those calculations project Glendora Water needing to reduce by over 30% to meet its objective by 2040, there is an alternative compliance pathway that meets the water reduction requirements. In addition to developing a plan and adhering to specific standards set by the AWWA, the annual report we submit must show we are reducing our per capita urban water use by an average of no less than 2% per year, as shown by data from the reporting year and the immediately preceding 2 years from its average per capita annual water use for the state fiscal years ending in 24, 25, 26. So the next 3 years, we're setting a baseline where if we are projected to be over 30%, there is a way to comply with that by reducing per capita use 2% per year until 2041. Additional enforcement measures, including potential fines, may be assessed to the supplier as early as November 1st, 2027. And that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Boy,
Now comes the testing portion of this evening. Rapid fire, by the way.
Boy, Christmas has come really early. This is such great news, Russell. This really is. Well, thank you for your excellent report. Thank you. This is serious stuff, and I'm glad that we have people like you on, board to help us and make sure that we can achieve this. So thank you. Karen, any questions or?
So if the next 3 years are baseline, so you're telling us use a lot of water right now, so then that baseline makes it very easy to show reductions going forward? Just kidding, just kidding. No.
Can I decline to answer that?
Yeah, no, just kidding. No, that is helpful to know there's other pathways, because I know when that came out in the media, the 43%, the people were, panicking, oh, I've already taken out my lawn, what am I going to do? And so that's really helpful to know that that's probably not accurate, plus there are additional pathways. So looking forward to see what some of the turf removal programs will continue to offer. I know there's a lot of folks still looking to those options, so.
Absolutely. In fact, we have partnered with the Metropolitan Water District to increase the residential turf removal program up to $4 a square foot. We have a landscape design and professional installation rebate program where we incentivize you to hire professionals to do these turf removals. And, we've been, even for existing residential landscapes, we've had programs where vendors have gone out and actually done leak repair or installed weather-based irrigation controllers that optimize your existing landscape to make it more efficient. So we're certainly focusing on outdoor residential water use with a majority of our programming. We also have the CII performance measure requirements, and so we'll continue our CII outreach as well and continue developing those programs in partnership with different vendors and utilities.
So for that rebate on the landscape architect, does that mean that individuals have to choose certain landscape architects, or it's just available to anyone?
So if they're a licensed landscape architect professional or a member of the Professional Landscape Designers Association, there's some criteria for what is a professional designer. They can get up to $500 in reimbursement for hiring them. For Contractors, it's pretty simple. You're either C27 landscape contractor or you're not. So if you're C27, then you can get an additional $500 for utilizing their services. You don't have to use one or the other. You can use both or one or either.
That's great.
But we also have landscape workshops that we're going to be putting on here in the coming months, starting in February, and we're going to be engaging the professional community. We've already begun to outreach to the landscape professional community to bring them in so that our residents have resources, folks that can help them make the transition and understand, it's this turf transformation process, exactly how does it work? What are you expecting to pay for these types of transformations? And what are the rebates and incentives that either the city's providing or our regional partners are providing?
Great. And the Water Hero program was great. I know my place of business, we took advantage of that and our Water Heroes. So we're very excited that we got to be part of that.
Yes, thank you for your participation.
Yes, no, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Gary, any questions?
Yeah, I do have one question. I was under the impression the landscape efficiency factor was going to be based on locations.
Yes.
Was the state not working on a map that was going to delegate different areas in the state?
So the climate, maybe if I go back to the formula. So the landscape efficiency factor is really a ratio of the plant water needs to how efficient the irrigation system delivers water. So those standards are kind of set. So as we can see, there's a 0.8, drops to a 0.63, drops to a 0.55. That's sort of like a set standard. Where things differ is the net ETO in this particular picture, which is how much water cool season turf grass is using in Glendora versus how much water cool season grass is using on the coast. They're going to be dramatically different, and that's where the climate change is different. So we might be using 55 inches, and the coast might be using 41 inches. So our water budget would then be slightly higher because it's taking into account the plant, what plant water use needs are locally.
Okay, but my understanding is maps aren't going to be available until like 2028.
Pardon me?
What I read somewhere was those maps aren't going to be available until like 2028, the different climate.
Actually, they have the reference ETO climate.
Oh, they do have it now?
out.
Okay.
Yeah, and they are working on enhancing the California Irrigation Management System, which is basically a series of weather stations that are placed throughout California that provide the reference ETO data that they base what plant water needs are what the plant water usage is. And so the state is providing that data and tables. They literally just provided a new table last week this is one of the data inputs that we need to put into our template so that we can calculate what is our outdoor water budget for residential, what does that look like here? And then that helps inform us of what kind of programming we should begin to really look at in terms of helping our community meet our urban water use objective.
Okay, so just to, in a hypothetical, when it comes to housing, additional development that has a very low outdoor water usage would actually be beneficial to residents that would have a need for additional outdoor water usage.
Yes, indoor water usage is less than outdoor water usage, and so effectively the answer to that question is yes. It's kind of how the state does math, where more people sometimes can mean less water because of the type of outdoor water usage. And and I know the question hasn't been asked, but one of the other things in the initial calculation, depending on the normal pathway or alternative pathway, was the socioeconomic status of a city or region too had an impact too. So in addition to the algebraic equations that are before you this evening, as well as data that is to be determined and yet published that we need, the city has to take other factors into account as well. So yes, sometimes more means less. It's understandably obtuse and sometimes difficult.
Well, it's just that, the question is, as new development is happening, people
Yeah.
are always asking where the water is coming from.
Yes.
And sometimes it can be beneficial.
Sometimes four houses uses less water than one because it doesn't have as much or functional turf or non-functional turf.
Okay, appreciate it, thank you.
Correct.
Michael?
So on that line of thinking, you can't share your water resources. It's property-based, correct?
Well, it's per capita, as Russell. So we're looking at the city as a whole and then trying to.
That's not
figure
what
that
this
out.
shows. This doesn't say as a whole. It's by commercial, it's by residential, it's by
Oh.
people. So you can't say, hey, I've got a surplus here, I can give it over here.
Well, kinda.
That's not what
Just
that,
not by type. Russell, do you mind
Yeah.
explaining different types, just a little more detail? I think it's important we look at things like commercial in total, residential in total. It's
Sure.
categorical, right?
well, that's what the chart showed. Three different,
Yeah.
he had different sections there, so I
So
don't
it's
think
not
you can
like
say
your
I've-
business uses X and this home uses Y. It's shared amongst those various factors and industries.
Yeah, but I don't think you can share, if you're under the utilization, share your excess with somebody else.
You want to talk about residential, just really quick? from
Agencies
that
couldn't
perspective?
share, but it's being measured by the state per agency.
Right, but this is gonna be per residential, because you, 55 gallons, right now, gonna go to 47 gallons per household, depending on how many people you have in there, which leads me into my question, who's the policing agency for one, and secondly, is there gonna be a survey for each
We're not,
household, how many people you have?
that's not what this is intended. This is residential in general.
Yeah.
So
there's
if
a-
you
okay.
use more and Gary used less,
Correct.
it's going to look good for the city because it will average
Right.
out.
As long as
Right.
it averages.
So
out.
they
They're going to
haven't
look at our
And if-
population and look at residential. And
So
go
this
that way.
hasn't been granular then to that lower level yet?
No.
But to-
If we used indoor water use as a community, we used less than what our objective was, then that means, if we're a little bit over on our outdoor residential water budget, it'll even out. And so we don't have to meet each individual standard that's set in this, except for the water loss standard, because that's a separate law. But if what we have to meet is the overall overarching water budget, so whether or not we do that by reducing outdoor water use, even if indoor water use stays the same, as long as we're under that objective, then we're deemed to be in compliance as a water agency as a whole.
But it's based on a budget, right? We're trying to
Okay.
stay within those various areas.
So it was mentioned about a separate meter for outside water use?
Yes, so for commercial properties, if they have a dedicated irrigation meter, then they will have a particular outdoor water budget assigned to them.
Are they required to have an outdoor separate meter for irrigation?
They're not required, but
Yet.
there will be there is a section of the CII performance measures that is trying to incentivize moving towards more dedicated irrigation meters when we have mixed-use meters on a particular commercial site. So this is part of their benchmarking attempts for commercial outdoor water use. Commercial indoor water use is very difficult to benchmark. And so they're going for kind of what they can right now. But the dedicated irrigation meter requirements are such that if you have a mixed-use meter, then, the state has written within the regulations that you're required to offer certain in lieu technologies or different programming to help that particular site achieve maximum water savings. So they're not saying you have to have a dedicated irrigation meter, but because that dedicated irrigation meter water budget then gets factored into the urban water use objective, that's kind of the incentive itself to have more dedicated irrigation meters.
So then how do you work on the budget when you have the one slide there of so many gallons per person per household to get the baseline? How are you going to manage that to get your baseline? You're going to have to ask people how many people are in their home to do this?
Well, we get a population issued to us by the state of California,
Right, but you don't know how many people are in one home.
and we won't, which is why it's a budget-based approach.
Understand, but there's a formula there based on how many people are in a home, how much water you can use.
Correct, but that just creates a total water budget for that specific category.
Okay, so you're just basically taking the overall population, saying this is what you got.
Yeah,
Correct.
that's correct.
So it doesn't go down to that granular level at that point in time.
No, because it's impossible. A single-family household, let's say, has a family of 4, kids go off to college, parents put in a pool to celebrate the kids being gone, the water usage goes up, right? So, I mean, people and households change, but which is why it's almost impossible on a per residential basis. I'm sure some agencies will try. I'm sure maybe Russell knows some, but it's not a practical solution.
So based on what Gary had mentioned about the regional water use, based on aridness of things of that nature, what about for slope maintenance and things of that nature? How is that going to work? Some areas are up in the foothills that you have to maintain vegetation to keep it from erosion, whereas you have flat area, you don't have that issue.
Yeah, that's being addressed in the DWR landscape area measurements. So they're looking at more than just residential right now. And they'll be looking at things like vegetative, naturalized slopes and whatnot, and giving us data on that. And then we will understand, how does that factor into the water budget? But that is to come.
Last question, you talked about here about water loss, about 17% was the number, I think it was. Just from my situation in the foothills, I've got bears that go and they take out a sprinkler, and I might know for a day or two. How does that work out with, you have to just deal with it? For that loss?
Yeah, the 17.1 gallons per connection per day is just an average for the entire system. They're saying based on the amount of real losses that you might have, what's actually potentially leaking through your distribution system.
Sorry about that. That's on our side of the meter, right?
Yeah, that's on
Not
our
on the
side.
private side of the meter.
Okay.
Yeah, so that is.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I'm sorry I didn't explain that better.
Okay,
But
no
yeah,
worries.
that is a system-specific standard for the supplier.
Do you ever see this getting more granular and coming down to residential areas? Because right now you have commercial areas, you can't have grass and things of that nature by the first of the year, right? You have to take it out. You can't have ornamental or non-use.
Yeah, so non-functional turf regulations are in place. And in fact, I was going to come back to you with a whole separate agenda on that.
Oh.
But non-functional, it does sort of tie into this, obviously, with the reduction of turf. But non-functional turf, there's a prohibition for watering non-functional turf on commercial properties. It also will apply to public properties and HOA common areas. And so that non-functional turf is, that regulation's already been passed, and each municipality will be having to adopt some form of that ordinance in order to be in compliance with the state regulation. We have a non-functional turf program going already. In fact, we've applied for grant funding through Three Valleys to expand our non-functional turf removal program. But that is specific to commercial properties and not residential. And so,
For the time being.
yeah, there may be other states moving in different directions, but California has for now, set the line at commercial properties that have non-functional turf will not be able to water it with potable water. And so that is something that, again, would be kind of difficult maybe to enforce residentially. What is non-functional turf on a residential property? I mean, we're in the process of defining what is non-functional turf in the first place, right? So So we'll be looking at how this adoption is rolled out within the state of California to see if there are different models that we can look at to create sort of a sensible enforcement mechanism, and at the same time provide an incentive to remove that non-functional turf before the laws actually go into effect. And they start in, I believe it's 2027, and they sort of roll out continuously till 2030.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Russell. We need a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Second.
All right, thank you. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Elois?
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Freno?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Russell, thank you, and keep up the good fight. Thank you. All right. Next is item 12 with Kelsey. Approve an agreement with Miracle Playground Sales for pour-in-place surfacing for South Hills Park, Ole Hammer Park, and Willow Springs Park in an amount not to exceed $284,000, 760 cents. Why didn't they just say, just trim off the 60 cents?
You should have.
Yeah, they should have. Kelsey, thank you for being here, and this is a early gift to your boss, John Aguirre. I know he's been waiting years and years and years for this to occur, so this will be good news.
Yes, thank you and good evening, Mayor and City Council. So tonight I'll be presenting the agreement with Miracle Playground Sales for pour-in-place surfacing for South Hills, Ole Hammer, and Willow Springs Parks. So in 2022, the city began transitioning our playgrounds to pour-in-place surfacing, starting with Gladstone Park using Prop 68 grant funds to replace one playground and resurface both the playgrounds. The playground at Louis Pompey Memorial Sports Park was resurfaced during the field construction in 2023. And earlier this year, we replaced and resurfaced the playground at Finkbeiner Park as part of the Finkbeiner Park Improvement Project. Dawson Park, located next to the Teen Center, already has pour-in-place surfacing that's original from 2003. Both its playground and surfacing are slated for replacement in this year's capital improvement project list. South Hills, Ole Hammer, and Willow Springs Parks are the last three parks in need of surfacing replacement. For the current condition, so currently all three of these parks have the rubber tire mulch surfacing. Before we requested bids for this project, I reached out to a third-party company to assess each playground and determine if any needed a full replacement. The evaluation confirmed that all three playgrounds were in good condition, and the only recommendation was to replace the swing chains, which we will take care of once the new surfacing is installed. We received 3 bids for this project. Staff evaluated each bid and compared their likeness, and it was deemed that Miracle Playground Sales was the lowest responsible bidder that included everything we needed for this project. We have $330,000 budgeted for this project in Capital Improvement Fund. After installation, we'll have approximately $45,300 remaining in the budget, which part of it will be used for overnight security during curing time and then playground inspection. And this concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. This is great, and these parks and the surface are so great, and it will allow anybody and everybody to access these parks. Even if I'm able to chase my great grandkids around in my walker, I could do it, and that'll be a good day to see the great grandkids. So anyway, thank you. This is going to be really, really good. Karen, any questions?
I was just going to say thank you very much for this report and for doing this soon. At Trails Day recently, someone was asking about that playground and said, when are you going to get rid of this? And I said, oh, I think we're doing that very soon. And so, ta-da!
Yay.
Thank you.
This is great. Michael?
Thank you, Kelsey. No questions. Congratulations, John.
No? David?
Yeah, just one, thank you. And we've had some success with this at a couple of other parks, as you've identified. Is this the same vendor that we liked when the results from the last couple of examples, or?
It is not, no.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I'm sure you've chosen wisely, so
Yeah.
good luck. And when they replace the change, you can fall off that swing and land on it.
There you go. That's right. That's right.
Okay, I'll move to approve items 1, 2, and 3.
I'll second.
Okay, just one question. So when is this going to start and when's it going to be done?
I'll be contacting them tomorrow to get on their schedule. Hopefully, they do have something later this month. If not, it'll be starting in January.
Oh, wow. Great.
Yep.
That is fast. Good deal. Okay. A motion's been made. Did I hear a second?
Yes.
David seconded. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Elois?
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Freenel?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
All right, great, thank you. And the last matter tonight is to approve an agreement with IDS Group for architectural and consultant services for the city courtyard in an amount not to exceed $725,581. Valerie is going to give us this update. This is great, great news. We've been excited to hear about this, so tell us what we're going to approve.
Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Mayor, and good evening, Council. So as you mentioned, this is a report on the City Corporate Yard Improvement Project. This is a project that is budgeted in the 5-year capital improvement plan, and it's in line with the city's strategic plan with Goal 5, which is to improve and maintain the city's infrastructure and facilities, and more specifically, Objective 1, which is to complete space planning and facility needs assessment. So the City Corporate Yard is located at the end of 1250 Vladimir Street, which is west of Valley Center, east of Lorraine, and north of Route 66. It is the primary storage facility for construction materials, equipment, and fleet and vehicles. It is also home to the streets, facilities, and fleet divisions. And with the space planning, there are plans to move the park, streets, and landscape division to the site as well. So a little bit of background, a facility assessment was conducted. An RFP was released in 2022 to conduct that facility assessment. And part of that scope was to inspect for structural, architectural, and electrical deficiencies, to go ahead and recommend whether the buildings should be retrofitted or demoed with new construction, and then to go ahead and prepare concept drawings, plans, and cost estimates. And some of the items that would need to be included would be new lift for heavy-duty trucks, separate housing for the antique fire engine, replace the pavement for the entire yard, as well as a new roof and new windows. So 3 proposals were received in response to that RFP. IDS Group was the lowest bidder, and they were, actually, I'll back up and say, so IDS, we did have an on-call agreement in place with them at that time. However, the on-call agreement was capped at $150,000. So staff went ahead and worked with IDS on modifying the scope so that they can negotiate the price and bring it in line with the on-call agreement. And with that, a notice to proceed was issued on May 31st of 2023. They went ahead and completed a facility analysis, and the results were that the buildings were outdated and obsolete. There's inadequate restrooms and also a lack of sufficient office and conference space. And so the recommendation was to go ahead and demo the existing buildings and go ahead and start fresh and do 4 new ones. So this is just an aerial picture of the site. It's about 2.8 acres, and you can see there are 4 buildings here. You've got a building with the number 1 is your streets division, number 2 is for your fleet, 3 is some workshop areas, and at 4 you have the facility division. And again, just some more photos so you can see the condition of the current site. And a look at the restroom, there's only one restroom with 2 stalls and 2 urinals there, and then there's your office area. So again, the recommendation was to go ahead and demo and construct 4 new buildings. And so the 4 new buildings, you'd have 1 new 2-story office building with compliant restroom facilities, break rooms, plenty of offices and meeting rooms as well. And then there would be 3 additional shop buildings. So the table here is going to go ahead and give an example and comparison of what's existing and what would be proposed. Building number 1 would be office space for facility maintenance, for streets, as well as the parks, trees, and landscaped. Then building 2, you would have offices for fleet maintenance, your garage, car wash area, as well as housing the antique fire truck. Building 3 would be paint, sign shop, and tire storage, and building 4 for workshop space for wood and metal. And you can see that currently the existing building space is about 8,270, and the proposed conceptual is about 18,300. So significantly larger, providing ample space. This is just a layout of the new proposed plan. So it's a nice, clean L-shaped. Again, building 1 would be 2-story, and then you have 2, 3, and 4 there. And then this is just a conceptual rendering. Both the top and the bottom are pretty much the same, just different elevations for you to take a look at. And again, there's more detail in your packet, but this is just an example conceptual floor plan. So as you can see, there's lots of space, lots of individual offices, more cubicle space, lots of conference space, kitchen, break room, lobby, locker room, so the guys can clean up before they take off after a long day of work. So our next steps are to continue to refine the schematic design, conduct the CEQA analysis, work on getting to completion of final architectural, engineering, and construction drawings, go ahead and get that through approval. With the IDS on-call agreement still in place, and because they went ahead and did the initial assessment and conceptual, staff went ahead and reached out to them to get a proposal. So the proposal to get us through the drawings, reviews, and approvals, as well as helping to prepare the RFP to go out to bid, and some construction oversight once we get there, and that's phase 2 of it, but the total amount for that would be $725,581. Again, as I mentioned at the start, this is budgeted within the CIP plan. We have a budget this year of $1,046,650. So there is that amount available and budgeted for this. And we'd have the remaining balance of $321,000. And so with that, the staff is recommending that we award an agreement for contract services to IDS Group in the amount not to exceed $725,581, and authorize the city manager or his designee to execute the agreement, including any minimal, non-substantive changes. And with that, I'll return it to council for any questions.
Valerie, thank you. This is going to be great. Michael, I just remind you that this is the last thing you stand before us and going home. So, questions? Maybe 1, 2.
So I hear 3.
And no. Please, it's yours.
Thank you, Valerie. There's a cap on there for the driveway there. Do we have to do anything with that or revisit that for seismic or anything like that since we're going to be redoing the site? Is there any requirements for that?
Well, this is all conceptual right now, and we're going to refine it. So all of that will be taken a look, and we will, again, make sure everything is compliant when we get to the final design.
But they're going to be doing the engineering for that, so will they?
They'll be doing the engineering for that, and the whole thing's going to be repaved, so they'll be taking a look at that as well.
Okay. In the past, there were noise concerns from the residents there for that area. Will they try to engineer some noise abatement?
We'll do our best, and we'll probably do some outreach with the neighbors also to make them aware. So we'll do our best to mitigate this sound that, there's going to be sound, so we'll do
Sure.
our best to mitigate that.
Yeah, but there's sound for the ongoing operations there. Because I've had complaints in the past about the area.
We'll do our best. Again, this is all, we'll be going through the design, refining, and seeing what we need to do so we can take that into consideration and see what best management practices are available to go ahead and address that.
Last question, this was not competitively bid. Is there a justification for this?
So you're correct, it was not, we did not go out to formal bid. There is there is something in the GMC, and then I did put it in the report. It's 2.4, which does allow us to avoid going out to bid under certain circumstances. We did feel that this one did fill that need due to their knowledge of the project and the timeliness issue as well. We also felt that with the initial RFP that we went out to bid, they were the lowest bidder, so they went ahead and demonstrated their ability to be competitive priced and have knowledge on the project where they can go ahead and move forward, complete it, and just be the best qualified due to the knowledge they have on it already.
When do you think they'll be done with the,
They are proposing 8 months to go ahead and get us to the final design. And then we'd still have to go out to bid. This is just to get the design work completed.
sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that quick enough?
Great job. The questions I was going to ask. Good job. Gary?
Okay, the only question I have is, can we get the fire truck out of the city yard and over to the museum? I think to
We have
myself,
tried.
we could probably build something a lot less to house that fire truck at the museum.
That's not the negotiation tactic they've used in the past, but no, I mean, it definitely, Councilmember, I appreciate it. It's something that we all agree needs to happen, just trying to figure out a way, and hopefully this is part of that process to figure that out.
Anyway, appreciate the presentation. This looks good and long overdue. Thanks, Valerie.
Karen?
No, thank you. Good report.
David?
Thank you, and I move to accept the 2 recommendations.
I'll second
second
that.
All right. Excellent. Okay, a motion has been made. David moved it, and who wants to claim the second?
Karen?
Karen?
Councilmember Elowitz?
Yes.
Councilmember Boyer?
Yes.
Councilmember Davis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Friedel?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Great. Valerie, thank you. John Gary, do you have anything to add to the Steffa bus? I know this is a passion of yours, and it's a great expression of love and care for people that live here. November the 30th and December the 7th at Walmart.
Yeah, that's when we'll be
Anything to add that we
collecting.
should know
And then
about?
on the Friday, December 13th, that's when we have the families down to the teen center, and they go shopping, usually between 3 to 5 gifts, and we have people there to wrap them, and then they leave there with presents in hand. So every year that we've done it, this is our 3rd year. I think our first year we had 100 and some participants. Last year we were at 240 some. So we look to increase that, just knowing how the economy is and stuff.
Yeah.
So we're always looking for people to help out, the less fortunate. And so we'll be out there those 2 days collecting in front of Walmart for our toy drive.
And just any kind of toys and
Yep.
unwrapped.
Yep.
And
And the big thing is where we have found out from 12 and older is a big group that we
Oh,
don't
wow.
think about. And that's one of our larger groups. So we usually go, we get a couple sponsors and then with our foundation, we buy gift cards for them at different establishments and they get 1 or 2 presents and then the gift cards.
the foundation, that's a good thing. So I think that people can give a check to that.
Yes.
It's a write-off. And if you don't want to shop, you can just stop by here and write a check, and then you'll take care of it.
Yep.
And you got a great board and a great team that does a good job. So that's another way that tangibly that you can support this.
Yep, and we already picked up 1 full box from police department. We have our our boxes out there wrapped at different locations where they can drop off. And then the police department was one, and they filled already a box, so we emptied it and left them another box.
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you, John.
No problem. Thank you.
Really good stuff. Okay, we're at the end. Michael, anything?
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving. Right on. Gary? Nope. Anything? Karen?
Just thankful for all of the community members who give of themselves each and every day and volunteer activities and other ways to better the community. So thank you to all of them.
David?
Nothing, thank you.
3 things. Remember the stroll on the 22nd and Thanksgiving, the 28th. We will not meet that week, and we will meet again on December the 10th. And so make sure that you're here, and all the best. Adam? Anything? Danny? Anything? Okay. Thank you. Thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of everything. We are dismissed at 9:05. Thank you.
Dismiss.